And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another exciting episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. I'm your host, Jeff Marlow, and tonight I'm joined by the master of the mediocre question, Jay Horry of Assembly Call. This evening, we're going to discuss Indiana's 78-65 win over the number 2 ranked, AP ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. They're number 5 in the coaches poll this week. This takes the women's record to a 19-1 overall record and 9-1 in the conference. But let's start this show the way we start every show, and that's with our banner moment. And I'm going to start out here, Jay, with the banner moment here. And I want to go with just the fact that for this brief moment, because as of right now, IU being 9-1 the conference, we're a half game in first place over everybody else. Statistically, a tie with Iowa. But right now, that was a huge win. This has been a huge stretch for the Hoosiers as they've come through this stretch, as they showed on the TV. The last 3 games now against ranked opponents, and have gone and 4 of the last 5, and they're now 6-0, I believe, against the AP top 25. So for this brief moment, though, the banner moment is IU in sole possession of first place by half a game in the Big Ten Conference standings at 9-1, and they will hold that at least until Iowa plays again, I believe, on Saturday. So our banner moment is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You are bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. Their new Indiana designs have been a big hit. So whether you want IU gear or other college teams or nothing associated with a team, Home Field probably has something for you. Go to Home Field Apparel and use our promo code HOME, HOME, to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. And once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, we're going to take it over to Jay, and let's get Jay's thoughts on the game tonight.
Coach Marlo, first of all, thanks for having me. Love being here with you. Always appreciate everything that you guys are doing over here on Doing the Work. I get to contribute on Assembly Call every now and again with my terrible questions and some over-unders and stuff like that. But appreciate the invite to be here on a great night for the Indiana women's basketball program. For the university in general. I mean, the crowd at Assembly Hall tonight was incredible. Jealous of everybody who got to be there tonight. I thought the blackout looked good on TV. And, it's just seeing so much for support for the program is awesome. So congrats to everybody involved in that. If anybody in the chat was there at the game, make sure to drop us a line. Let us know how it was and the atmosphere in the building. Would love to hear about that. It's great to see a team performance like this. We were texting back and forth during the game. I think some of the guard play in the first half worried us a little bit. We saw Ohio State with their press was able to speed us up kind of outside of our comfort zone. We were forcing some stuff. Our guards were kind of maybe taking some shots they shouldn't. And Mackenzie really settled us down. Got some buckets around the basket, and allowed our guards really to settle in. And in the second half, when Ohio State started to collapse, they made plays. And so, it was really a team effort from start to finish. People picking up where others left off at certain points in the game, and just, very, very happy with and very proud of the program where they are today. And happy to be here and talk to you about it.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we were texting back and forth, and I think we were both just kind of, just couldn't really believe the first half where Mackenzie and Yarden really carried the load, and how badly the wings, at least shooting the ball. I thought they were still showing some good hustle, but they were just really struggling to shoot the ball. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall at halftime just to hear. I highly doubt Coach Morin was, going, after him or anything, but I just would really love to hear what she said to him and what the adjustments they talked about as they came out for the third quarter and really sparked that run. And we'll get to the run in a little bit, but I just thought wanted to take you a second real quick. I know we'll talk a little bit, but just what'd you think of Yarden Garzon tonight?
I mean, Garzon's play. I mean, she was the one perimeter player who played okay in the first half, but her play in the second half, especially in that third quarter. There was a time when we were down. I think it was 38-37 something, or I think 38-35 ish or 38-34, where she steps up, makes a big three, and I think that really sparked our guards to really get things going. And I think not long after that, I think Chloe Morgan-Neal got involved, and some of the other guards really stepped up and started making plays. And so I think just the confidence to see a shot go in from the perimeter, it can be a big deal for everybody. In the first half, I think everybody kind of really struggled not only to take open shots, but to make open shots. And they were just so reliant on Holmes underneath. And once you see one ball go in, it can be a confidence booster for everybody on the floor.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I was about ready to text you that I thought was really going to be kind of a slugfest to the very end. And then IU goes off on that 17-0 run in the third quarter. And that really was where the game was, even though Ohio State made a nice run in the fourth quarter. Just, but I want to get your opinion. Just, it's interesting because they were struggling offensively up until the third quarter, but the defense, even though they'd given up 36 in the first half, the defense really hadn't played too bad.
Yeah. And, I think the half-court defense was good all night. I mean, I think the biggest issue in the first half was the turnovers, and we were giving up live ball turnovers. Ohio State was getting runouts, and they were getting buckets at the basket very easily. I think I have it at the, 14 minutes into the game, IU had 8 turnovers, and they finished with, I think, 12, one of which was the last possession shot clock violation. So they finished with 11 turnovers, 8 of which were in the first 14 or 15 minutes of the game. And that led to a ton of Ohio State run out points. And once those stopped, the Ohio State offense really struggled to score against our half-court defense. And, a lot of credit, I think, a lot of that is the offense settling down too. I think in that first 15 minutes, we were forcing a lot. Ohio State really succeeded at speeding us up. And once we settled into the game, and I'm sure there were comments in the huddle about, hey guys, settle down. We're as good as these guys. They're not playing us off the court. Just settle down and quit beating yourself. And once they did that, Ohio State just really couldn't hang in the half court with us.
No, and I agree with that. And I thought maybe even just a little bit in the first half, some of the shots that they had at the rim that they just didn't finish could have really been a huge part of swinging some of the momentum a little bit earlier. Because I really felt like we left some points there against the press. And then the second half, they didn't. That second half, when they broke the pressure down and got layups, they made them. And from that standpoint, so let's go to kind of talk about, Jay. We'll go to how did the play, what Kathy and I call as expected here, from what you've seen of the Hoosiers this year. What kind of went as expected for the Hoosiers tonight?
I mean, it's Mackenzie Holmes. I mean, she is in that first half. I was making some jokes back in our text thread about this. I've seen this where you have a bunch of guards that are struggling to score, and then you have somebody who's dominating the paint and scoring around the basket. And that's what it felt like in the first half when Mackenzie, I think, had 18 in the first half out of our 32, and everybody else was struggling. But when they got it to her, she scored. And so, once we got to the second half, Ohio State they changed up their coverage. They started dropping on everything, and Mackenzie made the smart plays. The guards made the smart plays. They made open shots. And so, but what it comes down to me for is that when this team, when maybe everything else is going wrong, you have Mackenzie Holmes to fall back on. She gets buckets. She gets stops. She protects the rim on the other end. And she kind of feeds this team making successful plays on both ends of the court, even when everybody else is struggling.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of go to the other to a different player there as well. It was Sydney Parish, and I would have thought if we would have talked at halftime, if we would have done a halftime show, I would have told you I didn't think Sydney played very well in the first half. but she had 6 rebounds. She finished with 11 rebounds. In fact, she had the high number of rebounds tonight. She was the leading rebounder with 11. And Coach Morin said this a couple of weeks ago about Sydney and I don't know if some of our watchers and some of the people in the chat, the Workaholics, got to see us. I saw it on Twitter. There was a little bit of I can't remember if it was the NCAA feed or the Big Ten feed had Sydney mic'd up in practice. They were kind of following her through practice, talking, listening to her talk and stuff. But there's a lot of talk, Sydney, her makeup, even Coach Moore said this, you see the hair, you see the makeup, you see the nails, and you kind of think, she's girly, but she's a competitor. And she really, I thought in the second half was one that I thought maybe at halftime, you kind of looked in the mirror and was like, even though she'd had the 6 rebounds, she hadn't hit a shot, she hadn't scored. And so I think maybe she was one's like, I can play better. I got to do better. And she came out and I thought she played even better in the second half, obviously hit some shots, but she's just one of those that always seems to be in the right place at the right time. I liked watching her play in high school, just really a good IQ. You mentioned in our text how she drew that 5th foul on McMahon, which I thought was a big play, even though it probably wasn't going to determine win or loss, but to get McMahon out of the game, I thought was a big play for us. And Sydney, as you said, really baited the freshman into a foul there. So what'd you think about Sydney's play tonight?
She's a dog. I mean, like, she does all the little stuff, and it doesn't always show up in the stat sheet, but she filled the stat sheet today with, 12 points, 11 boards, 4 assists. She picked up 2 early fouls, but she only finished with she finished with 4 fouls, but stayed in the game. She had a steal, she had a block. She does all the little stuff, and she's not afraid to shoot. She's never afraid to shoot. She's very confident in how she plays. And I feel like she really is kind of that leader on the floor and very outspoken too. And she plays very intelligent basketball and is never lacking in confidence, anything on the floor. The play where she fouled out McMahon was just so smart because she's been cutting across all day. She cuts to the corner and looks for a shot. She cuts across and then just stops at the block. And McMahon, who thinks she's going towards the corner, just runs her over. And it's an obvious foul. But it's a play where you have a freshman trying to guard a senior, and the senior just completely outsmarts him. I have no idea if that was a play to get Sydney a post. I'm guessing it wasn't. I'm guessing she just read it and just let McMahon run her over, and then she gets to the line. But just an incredible game all around by Sydney. If we had a Hoosier Hustle Award, she'd get that award for the women tonight. I think everything she did outside of and she still had 12 points, but everything she did on the court, I think, was incredibly meaningful to this win tonight.
Yeah, and the last thing I'm going to bring up here is, and I want to get your opinion as well, is this is a team that I think all of our fans really need to enjoy, just because not only are they good, not only are they having a season, and they're having a very good run, and I expect the run to actually continue. Now, will they be necessarily 19-1 a year from now? We'll have to wait and see with that. But this team felt when Ohio State made that run in the second quarter and got up, 27-23, and it looked like maybe really going to kind of extend that lead out. This team didn't panic. You didn't see anybody out there starting to look at each other, pointing fingers, anything like that. You've got veteran leadership, as you mentioned. Sydney's a leader coming in this year. You've got Grace Berger, who I'm going to wait and talk a little bit more about Grace per se in a little bit. But Grace Berger, to me, is just the ultimate leader on a team that you want to have if you want to have a winning team. Mackenzie's been around for a while. So, I just, when I was watching their body language, there was no panic. There was nothing in their actions. It was like, oh my goodness, we're getting in trouble. Nope. They're going to keep to the game plan. They're going to keep doing. They'll make some adjustments, and they're probably telling each other, we got to do a little better. But there was none of that bad body language you might see from a team that lacks leadership.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, as you mentioned, there was that time in the second quarter, and I think I wrote it down. It was about 2 minutes, 30 seconds left. I think Ohio State was up 35-28. And we took Holmes out. Holmes had just gotten another foul. I think she got her second foul. Ohio State they went to a little matchup zone, and I think it was really the only time they played it during the game. They played a little matchup zone, and there was a missed shot by IU, and Meester got the rebound, got fouled, made 2 free throws, cut it to 35-30, and then we end the half at 36-32. With it, just I feel like we had a little bit of momentum there, but it's plays like that kind of can make a difference and turn the course of the game. And this team just is full of players that are able to do that. I mean, we haven't mentioned Garzon yet, which she just was incredible in the third quarter. And I'm sure we'll talk about her at some point here when we talk about the run. But she kind of kept us close, and with some plays in the first half too. Apparently, she ended up with 10 rebounds too, which I didn't realize. Which is an incredible double from her too. But it was that point in the second quarter when you're kind of looking around with Holmes out of the game, wondering who's gonna make a play, and we had some women really step up and keep us in this game to the point where we can make that run in the third quarter.
Yeah. And so let's move on to our surprises. And I want to talk, this is where I want to talk about the run a little bit, Jay. Great lead in here, because I didn't think either team would have the type of run we saw from IU tonight. I love this team. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad we did. But in a matchup between basically two top 5 teams, I would never have imagined either team going on a deep double-digit run of 15-0, 14-0, and we ended up on a 17-0 run. We at one point it was 23-3. It was a 27-6 quarter. That surprised me just because of the quality of the opponent we're playing. But I want to throw it back to you because I agree with you. I really thought Yarden Garzon got us kickstarted on that. I want to get some more thoughts from you about Yarden.
Yeah, so I have it written down. It was 38-34. Grace penetrates, kicks to Garzon. She makes a 3. We come down. I think there's six-minute point in the third quarter, and Ohio State gets a foul. They miss both free throws, and then we immediately transition off of that. Chloe Moore McNeil gets her first basket of the game. She really struggled in the first half. Gets her first basket, which is an and one. At that point, it gets up to an 8-0 run. Coming down the court again, we deflect the pass. All of a sudden, Sydney makes a 3. It's 43-38 IU. Next possession down, Garzon makes a 3. Next possession down, Garzon makes a 3. Next possession down, Garzon stealing layup. So it's just things like that where just a little thing where Grace makes a good play, Garzon hits a 3. All of a sudden they miss 2 free throws and we're running. We're off and running. They start turning it over. The crowd is going crazy, and I think the crowd made a big difference in this game. Whatever you want to say about it, they're playing in Assembly Hall in front of 10,500 people. Is going to cause a lot of issues for a team, and it seemed like the crowd really affected the third quarter, and really turned that run into maybe it's a 6, 7, 8 point run, and the crowd extended it with the great play of the girls, the women to get it out to a 17-point run. Again, it's going on a 17-point run against the number 2 or 5 or whatever you want to call it team in the country. Not something you ever expect, but IU just executed extremely well. They got open shots, they made them, and really just made Ohio State pay for their mistakes.
Yeah, and kind of the flip side of that, the surprise was, I think I texted you at halftime, outside of Yarden and Mackenzie, we were 1 for 13 in the first half. Grace had the only bucket outside of those 2, and everybody else was struggling. And that surprised me because there have been times when we've struggled to hit threes this year, and usually 1 or 2 players. But that kind of collective struggle hitting open shots in the first half was a little bit surprising. And I want, and this is where I think I'll throw in Grace Berger a little bit as well. Not so much because she's a surprise, but just I thought is part of that surprise in the run was Grace didn't have to score. Grace just being on the floor, Grace being the leader she is, as you talked about, at least 2 of those plays were assists that Grace Berger had in that run. And because she got, especially on that one, the first one, I think to Garzon, where she got in the middle of the lane, the defense collapsed to her, and she throws a left-handed pass left-handed pass out to the corner for the 3 right there in front of the bench. And it wasn't a bad pass. It wasn't one of those where Yarden had to go get it. It was right in the shooting pocket. And all Yarden had to do was basically go right into her motion and shoot it. And so I just think that is really shows, I knew this about Grace anyway, but with talking with her last year, she's not too worried about her stats, her individual stats. All she's worried about is winning. So she's going to do. And then you saw that in the fourth quarter where she's just going to do, she hit a couple big shots because it was like, hey, it's winning time. This is what I do. And so that, to me, to see her kind of struggle in the first half was a little bit of a surprise. I just felt, I almost wonder to a certain degree, Jay, and I kind of want your thoughts on this, almost like do you feel like to a certain degree, the crowd being so hyped before the game and early, were they maybe even a little overhyped? I remember playing that when you had a good crowd, sometimes that crowd almost got you overhyped.
No, absolutely. And I think that's, that can be expected to a certain extent. It's a huge game. I mean, they've been I mean, everybody's been hyping this game up all week. You have previously undefeated, but a one-loss team that's top 5 in the country coming in, and you think you're better than them, so you want to show that you're better than them. And the crowd's going crazy. It's a huge crowd, and you come out a little over energetic. You start forcing things a little bit, and I think that was pretty clear from like Moore McNeil in the first half, and Grace a little bit too, and Sydney, and I think there was some clear just kind of, you're trying to make a play because you want to keep the crowd going, so you start forcing a little bit, especially when Ohio State's they're really trying to speed you up, and so. And when you kind of feed into that, those things can kind of perpetuate themselves, and then you get into issues. But, all credit to the coaching staff to get everybody to settle down. I mean, because it could have gotten out of hand when Ohio State was going on some runs. In the first quarter, Ohio State got out to a little lead. IU settles down. We bring it back to a 1-point deficit after the first quarter. Same thing happened in the second quarter. Ohio State gets out to a little lead. IU is able to kind of get it back within 4 at halftime. And then you see what happens in the third quarter. And then we're off and running from there. But I completely agree, Coach, about sometimes it's easy to get overhyped, especially when you're playing in front of this many people that are going absolutely bonkers for hours before the game.
Yeah, and kudos to the crowd for showing up tonight. Another record crowd, regular season record crowd. I believe it was 10,455 was the number tonight. I do have it here if I want to look it up real quick instead of trying to guess. The attendance was 10,455, and I saw a couple things on Twitter, and we've seen a couple things here in the chat with the Workaholics that people who were there and talking about how loud it was. And let's see if we can break that record again. Whether it's Sunday or a game here in the future, let's see if we can get another record crowd into Assembly Hall, or keep breaking records as we go along, because the women have earned the backing, and they are a fun team to watch. So Jay, I'm also going to throw it to you here. Let's go inside the numbers a little bit, and I'll let you pick out a team stat here that you felt was maybe a key.
Yeah, and I've already mentioned it briefly, but the turnover number, when you have 8 turnovers in the first 14 minutes of a game, that can really get away from you. And the maturity and the adjustments made by IU to really slow it down, because they were always breaking the press. With none of the turnovers were forced by the press. So many turnovers happened after they broke the press, and they were forcing shots or forcing penetration when it wasn't there. And so once they were able to settle down and realize, hey, we can break this press with no issue, and then we can get into our flow, get into our offense, run our sets, and they can't really stick with us in the half court because they either have to choose. They can either choose to get beat by Mackenzie inside, or everything can collapse on Mackenzie when they're trying to deny the post, or guard her when she catches, and we're going to have wide open shooters on the wings. So I think that part was huge. And it was just one of those things where it just shows the maturity of the team, because you look across the numbers. I mean, IU is only 6 for 21 from 3. It's like they got the rebounding numbers were even. One thing that sticks out is that IU had 21 assists and Ohio State had 8. So, once they got into that half court offense, quit turning it over, they found the open shooter, they found the open person in the lane, they found the cutter, and they made the right play. And that's what really comes back to this team continuously makes the right play. Maybe somebody misses an open shot or something like that, but when this team runs their sets and runs their offense, they make the right play consistently. That's why it's so hard to beat them.
Yeah, and I think if we've talked at the halftime, if we've done a halftime show, we've been talking totally different about this. But I was surprised as you started talking about that. I looked it up. IU won the points off the turnover battle, 17-11. I'm looking at the stats here, and then the fast break points were 20-9. So we felt like the pace was really maybe getting away from us, and we end up, plus there. I'm going to talk about a couple things real quick on the team before I throw it back to you, and that was second half shooting percentages. Indiana shot 52% from the field in the second half. We held Ohio State to 30%. And to me, that was the key, because the first half, it was kind of opposite. Ohio State shot 47%. We shot 39%. And I thought that our shooting and our defensive field goal percentage were two numbers I really wanted to point out there that kind of, because I really thought, and I saw this in the Workaholic, you and I talked a little bit about it in the text back and forth, the defense really got locked in the third quarter. And that may have been the big emphasis at halftime to really try and tighten up the defensive end. And I really felt that, that showed up there in the shooting numbers. Is there anything else on the team side you wanted to mention, or we can also go on to individuals if you want to go that way?
I was shocked because you said that Ohio State finished with 11 points off turnovers, and you texted me at exactly 9:00 and said Ohio State has 11 points off turnovers. Yep. So, it's wild the last and it's probably when it stopped, when they had 14 minutes into the game or whatever it was. And we just quit turning the ball over, especially, and that's, we had so many live ball turnovers, and that's what kills you.
Yep.
Especially against a team that's as athletic and as fast as Ohio State is. If you're turning the ball over in live situations, they're going to get runouts. They're going to get easy buckets. Once we eliminated that, Ohio State really struggled to find offense.
Yeah. And I was going to point out too, with that in my head, at the half, it was 11-2. Ohio State led 11-2 in points off turnovers. So that means it was 15-0 in the second half. So that's just amazing. So again, I'll throw it back to you. Any individual, or we can go multiple individuals here, but I'll let you start out with an individual you want to talk about here numbers wise.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about Mackenzie for, every day till Sunday and talk about how awesome she is and how much, she was 11 for 13 from the floor. And 26 points and 4 rebounds and just really dominated the paint. And, so much of that, she had 18 in the first half, and Ohio State really made a point of trying to take her out of the game in the second half. And that's when Garzon stepped up, and she was phenomenal in the third quarter. And she, if Ohio State, decides that they're not going to let Mackenzie Holmes beat them, you're going to need somebody to step up and make plays. And our guard perimeter players really did that, whether it was Grace making the right pass or Sydney doing the little things. And Sydney hit a 3 in that run too. But Garzon really, I think she scored 11 points in that 17-point run or something like that. Or at least she scored 11 in the 23-3 run, I know. And so I think she really, that firepower is something that I think Indiana women's teams have kind of missed in the past. They were so reliant, on Grace and Mackenzie in the last few years. Now we have, Sydney can get hot, Garzon can get hot, Scotty can get hot. So there's just so many other options now, people that can step up and make shots, get buckets. And so, those Garzon being the key to that run in the third quarter would be my go-to on that.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go on the other side of that, and on a positive note, we held Cody McMahon to 3 points in the second half. She had 18 at the half. She finishes with 21. Now, part of that, she also got in some foul trouble, but I thought they did a couple possessions, and I only saw it on a couple of possessions, but I also think one of the adjustments they made at halftime, you and I were talking about this in the text, that McMahon was just spinning and getting into the lane, and it was really not getting any contested defense after she would make the spin move. And there were a couple of times there in the second half where the defender didn't go for kind of the first initial move to the one direction. And that's what McMahon wants to do. We used to see that from one of the teams up here, and we'd scouted that and saw that all their players wanted to take one step, one dribble, getting you going the way, certain way, and then they were going to spin back to where they really wanted to be. And McMahon, I think, was doing that quite a bit tonight. And they made the adjustment. I saw it twice. First time was with Grace Berger. Grace came and doubled her. They didn't go for the first little move, and Grace came to be there on the spin move, and it surprised McMahon. She traveled and turned it over. And the second time, I think she ended up kind of forcing up a shot that wasn't a good shot, and we got the rebound. So I remember two distinct times where we made, and so that to me was a halftime adjustment that they had made from that standpoint. I also want to kind of point out the numbers here and see what you think as well. At halftime, Chloe, Sydney, and Grace had combined for 3 points. In the second half, they combined for 25. Those three combined for 25 points. To kind of go with your part about the outside players had to step up if we were going to win tonight. After Mackenzie played so well in the second half, or excuse me, in the first half, and they did, and everything. Just again another total team effort.
Absolutely. The guard play was the perimeter players really stepped up in the second half when they had to. Yeah. Ohio State, the only reason we were in the game at halftime was Mackenzie had 18, and they went into halftime and said, we cannot let that happen again. And so they didn't, they took away they were almost to the point of they were doubling Mackenzie before the catch. I mean, they were fading everybody towards her. They were not going to let her catch the ball. If they did if she did catch it, they were going to collapse. And we had wide open perimeter players, and they stepped up and made shots. And going back to your comments about McMahon, let's not forget about Mike Sell. A 21 scores 21 a game. She scores 15 tonight, but it took her 17 shots. She was 1 of 5 from 3, and Ohio State was only 3 of 15 from 3 total. And I think that they kind of missed some open shots in the first half, but in general the defense was really good on them. We didn't give them a ton of open looks. Some of the stuff they got were just very athletic, getting into the lane, getting layups, and getting creative around the rim and doing stuff like that. But even Mike Sell, I feel like we made her work very hard for that 15 points. I mean, she hit step backs. She was trying everything she could to get shots off, and she was still 7 of 17 from the field. So I think our perimeter defense was very good. And once we got them out of transition, the offensive transition, I think they just really struggled to score. And that kind of goes back to the play of our perimeter players. Even in the first half when they were struggling, I think they still guarded well. They competed hard, especially in the half court. And then once we turn this into a half court game, I think our half court. I think we're just a better team in the half court.
Well, the other thing was the big girl. I don't want to say her name because it's Mikulasakova. I'm going to butcher so bad. I apologize to the kid because I don't know how to say it well. But the big girl was coming in averaging almost 18 a game tonight, and we held her to 3. And she only played 17 minutes. She got in some foul trouble, but I also think that they felt like they were really struggling to guard in the second half once we started hitting. And if you're the Ohio State staff, I can't blame them. After that first half, I would have been like, pack everything in and make them hit something. And our players stepped up and made shots. So with that, when you look at it, Sydney ended up 4 for 9. Grayson ended up 4 for 9. Chloe still struggled to hit shots, but she made other plays. She made winning plays as well. So that was what I wanted to make sure I mentioned about that. Anything else on the numbers you want to talk about?
I think we covered it.
All right. Okay, so we do have a game ball here tonight for you, Jay, and I'm going to throw it to you first. And for the people who are watching our live feed on YouTube, you can see the scroll at the bottom right now. This is kind of the female version of if you watch the Assembly Call Post games, where we almost have to, maybe in the future when she graduates, we may just have to rename this as like the Mackenzie Holmes game ball. But Mac leads the way right now with 11. But I'm going to throw it to you and see what you think tonight. Who gets your game ball?
Yeah, as much as I would love it, to give it to Garzon, it's got to be Mackenzie Holmes. She kept us in the game in the first half, and she really changed. She changed the course of the game. If she struggles in the first half, then IU's probably down by 10 or 15. She carries us through the first half. Ohio State has to make adjustments in the second half to try to take her away, and then everybody else steps up. So it's Mackenzie Holmes, and that's why she's an All-American. She's an incredible player, and she carried this team when Grace was out. She continues to carry it, and she's just enjoy her while she's here. I know we all have, and we'll continue to do so the rest of the season. But just an incredible basketball player.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier. She shot 11 for 13. She was coming in tonight shooting 67%, which is second in the country. I want to see the kid that's shooting a higher percentage than her. I mean, that's 67%, such a high number, even for Mac, who gets a lot of her shots down low within several feet of the basket. That's still an incredible percentage to shoot 67%, and she upped that percentage tonight. So, yeah, I'm with you. She didn't maybe rebound as well tonight. She got pulled away. That was one of the things I thought Ohio State did a little bit better in the first half than they did the second half. They were able to kind of pull her out from the basket and force her to guard a little bit, which probably took away some of the rebounding opportunities she might have had normally with that. But yeah, I'm with you. And I will say this. I think everybody just assumes that the player of the year in the league is going to be Caitlin Clark. And Caitlin Clark is a great player. But Mackenzie at least there has to be a discussion. There has to be a discussion at least about Mackenzie Holmes and Caitlin Clark. And it may very well come down to who wins the league as well. And because, I hate to say it that way, but I think that sometimes voters do look at that. They want to look at, where you finish or if it came down to those two teams at the end. But yeah, Caitlin's a special player. Don't get me wrong, but Mackenzie Holmes should be it should be at least at this point kind of an even conversation about who the player of the year in the league is, because they're both doing outstanding things. So Mackenzie gets our game ball. That's her 12th game ball of the year here on Doing the Work. And then we'll throw it to Jay and see what he thinks about the Hustle Award. And our Hustle Award, similar to what he sees sometimes on Assembly Call, we've had several players win the Hustle Award for us. And Chloe Moore McNeil right now leads the way with 5.5. We've had a couple times this year with Kathy and I where we've split the award. But I'm going to throw it over to you, Jay, and see who you had for the Hoosier Hustle Award.
Yeah, and this is tough, but I'm going to go with Sydney. I think we talked about her earlier. She didn't have her offensive game going in the first half. But Ohio State, as you mentioned, worked to pull Mackenzie away from the basket. But Sydney was in there getting rebounds. I mean, she's a perimeter player, but she was battling underneath the basket. She got rebounds and she would push the ball off the rebounds. 10 defensive rebounds for Sydney to go along with 4 assists. She had a block and a steal. I think everything she did was just through pure determination and grit. I think she'd be the first person to tell you that she wouldn't be happy with, how she shot the ball today. She was 1 of 5 from 3 on open and majority open looks, but she did not let that get into her head. Sometimes if you see somebody who's a good shooter, a good scorer, they miss some shots, it can take them out of the game. That did not happen with Sydney. She doubled down. She went below the basket, got boards, and turned those into positives on the offensive end for IU. So it's got to be Sydney for me.
Yeah, and that was who I had as well. Especially, I really felt the second half was kind of the determinant for me of who was going to get the Hustle Award. And again, we could have gone maybe a couple different directions. I think Chloe could get some consideration here. I think Grace could get some consideration. But I thought I agreed with you, and especially after I kind of saw the first half and kind of went back and looked at it over my mind with the stats. Other than scoring, Sydney didn't play all that badly in the first half. And there were some times there in the second half. She just makes winning plays. And that could be said of a lot of them, but there's just a certain, like I said, an IQ there that she brings to the floor that just, I think really has kind of helped this team get to a little higher ceiling and a little higher floor than maybe even they had last year with the group we had. So we're going to give Sydney our Hustle Award. That makes her she now has 4.5, which puts her keeps her in second place on the Hustle Award for the year here on Doing the Work.
I'm going to have to blame Kathy for these half balls. I don't agree with this kind of stuff. I mean,
she'll be glad to hear that. That's sometimes the only problem you have when you only got 2 people, and sometimes workaholics will be about as split as we are. So sometimes it's hard to get the workaholics. So Jay, I think this is one of those where talking the other night with Andy Bottoms, who joined me after the Michigan game, when you're 19-1 and you're 9-1 in the league, and we talk about lingering questions, we're going to sound like we're nitpicking, but that's what the segment's called, is lingering questions. But is there anything that you saw tonight that you're thinking we got to tighten that up a little bit, or that's something that maybe somebody else might be able to take advantage of us down the line?
As you mentioned, it's tough. This is an incredibly good team. It's well put together. I feel like everybody plays her role very well, and so. But there aren't off days in this conference. This is a loaded conference with a bunch of top 10, 15 teams that you're going to have to earn it. And right now they're continuing to earn it. You know, they've beaten 6 teams in the top 25, I think it is, but the schedule's not going to get any easier. And so, not that I think they would start reading their own press clippings or anything like that, but you got to come out every day, every game, like you're the underdog. This program has been the underdog for so long, so it was very easy for this program to say for a long time that nobody respects you. You're the underdog. You have to come in and prove that you belong on this court. It's not the case anymore. People are going to say that when they play IU. That they expect IU to be now a top team in the country. So keeping a level head and continuing to grind when maybe you don't think you have to every day, I think is the big thing. And I don't expect any less of these ladies because they've shown over years that they're able to do that. But it's fun to be along for this ride. It's you don't get to see this type of sustained success in college basketball that often. So it's good to see. And other than that, not a lot of questions you can ask about this program right now.
No, right now, that's why I said when you're 19-1 and 9-1 in the league, it like I said, it really almost comes across as nitpicking, and we're trying not to nitpick on. I'm just more along the line, kind of like you said, it's just every game's you got to be ready, and I think this team will be ready. But like you talked about, this is a team, and having talked with Grace a little bit last year when we were doing the show with her, that I think even last year they started to understand this, that they realize that there's a target on them now, that they are the hunted. They aren't the hunter so much anymore, as the roles have reversed. And I think that Coach Moore and the staff, the leadership on the team, with the kids, especially the veteran kids, and there are a lot of veterans here who remember what it was like when they were the hunter. But now we have to realize that teams, for some of these teams, for example, Rutgers coming in on Sunday, if Rutgers could somehow come in and win at Assembly Hall, that makes their season. And we've become that kind of game where we can kind of make somebody's season that they can look back at the end of the year and be like, we beat Indiana. And I think that's something that they know, and they're going to take care of with their mentality, their work ethic. As Terry Moran always says, do the work. But I really don't right now have any lingering questions. Everybody's about as healthy as we can get, and we want to keep it that way. But it's just fun to watch. And I want to see how much longer we just kind of keep it going. Like you said, every night in the league is a tough game. And so I don't expect them to run the table from here on out. But I really am excited to watch them as they go through here and take on this part of it. And speaking of our next opponent, it is Rutgers on Sunday. And if I can find my spot here, there we go. There we go. That game is at 2:00 Eastern, 1 Central on Sunday. That game, unfortunately, for those of us who like to watch the Hoosiers, it'll be on BTN Plus, Big Ten Plus. So unless you have, hopefully, if you have your pay subscription to watch on BTN Plus, we should be getting toward the end of those. I think once we get to February, almost every game gets to either BTN, regular Big Ten Network, or even ESPN or Fox. The all-time series is tied 6-6, including 2-2 in Bloomington. IU has won the last 3 in a row and 6 of the last 10, including a 66-54 victory at the Big Ten tournament last year. Rutgers comes in. They were playing tonight against Penn State. They were leading. I did not see the final score before we started our show, but they were coming in tonight 8-13 overall, 2-7 in the league. They are averaging only 63.6 points per game. They're 13th in the Big Ten in scoring. They give up 72 points a game, which is also 13th in the Big Ten. And they are minus 6.9 in turnover margin, which is worse than the Big Ten. So you can see why they've been struggling a little bit. They're only shooting 41% from the field, and that includes 34% from three. But they have held opponents to 41% shooting and 33% from three. They're led in scoring by a freshman, Kayleen Smickley, with 17.3 points per game. That's 9th in the Big Ten. She is this current week's freshman of the week. China Cornwell, 6'3" junior, leads them at rebounding. And they have a new coach. Coquise Washington is in her first year as the head coach of the Scarlet Knights. She previously coached at Penn State for 12 years, from 2007 to 2019. She was 209 and 169 at Penn State, including 98 and 107 in the Big Ten. as well. So a couple programming notes. Assembly Call will be on Saturday night after the Ohio State men's game with their post-game show. Also, be sure to catch and subscribe to the next episode of Crimson Cast, which is part of our Back Home Network family. And our next show will be Sunday the 29th, live after the Rutgers game at approximately 3 o'clock Eastern and 2 Central. And so let's go last call here. And Jay, what's on your mind as we wrap things up?
Yeah, Coach. I mean, again, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk with you about this amazing team. They're so much fun to watch. It's great to see. First of all, it's great to see the Big Ten Conference have so many great women's teams. So there can be games like a matchup of 2 top 6 teams or whatever you want to call it. And to have the IU women's program be a part of that is fantastic. So just where the program has built itself into, the support that they continue to get from the IU fan base. The crowd seemed amazing tonight. From the chat I've been trying to follow along, it looks like everybody there maybe have some ears ringing and some voices that might be going out. So it sounds like it was an amazing atmosphere. It seemed like it was on TV. And so just having that as a part of the IU sports family is fantastic. So happy to be here. Happy to talk about women's basketball anytime you'll have me. And just so proud of the Coach Moore and everything she's done and the women that are on the floor tonight. So again, thanks again, and let's keep rolling.
Yeah, I want to thank you for stepping in, helping us out tonight. Glad to have you. We'll be very happy to have you in the back. I should have mentioned at the top, Amanda Foster from Inside the Hall was supposed to be with us, as we had kind of publicized that, but Amanda woke up this morning with a sore throat, wasn't feeling the best, so she thought better not to come on, and Jay was able to come in here and help us out tonight, and we really want to thank Jay for joining us as well. And I want to, one thing, I was watching the chat, Jay, sounds like some of them are kind of getting a slow crawl out of the parking lot. I'm not sure IUPD or Bloomington PD is used to such large crowds at the women's game, because it doesn't sound like there was anybody directing traffic out of the parking lot at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. But I'm with you. Just to watch where this program has come in the time that Terry Morin has been the head coach. I like Terry, and I for those who don't know, I've known Terry, or at least of her. My niece played at Butler in the mid-90s. And Terry was an assistant coach there at the time for June Okowski. So we've kind of known Terry for a while, and I always thought Terry would be a good coach. I followed her as I was coaching. I've kind of followed her career at University of Indianapolis and Indiana State. But as much as I respect Terry and thought she'd be a good coach, if you had told me that in 9 years she would become the winningest coach at Indiana, and that this program would go from at best a mid-level Big Ten team to one of the premier teams in the country, I would have been like, nah, it's going to take longer than that. And Terry and her staff have done an outstanding job, and let's enjoy it. And hopefully it'll continue on into the future, obviously, but just enjoy it too right now. And I think that's one of the things that we should realize. And I also want to shout out to Jared Morris. Jared helped us a little bit tonight, and also I think he's now 7-0 since he started wearing his new Home Field Apparel women's 1983 shirt. So he's going to have to keep wearing it for games, because between the men and the women, he's like 7-0 now wearing that shirt. So we'll shout out to him here on Last Call.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten my most recent orders. Jared got the preview shipment, and I'm still waiting on my Home Field order. I had to cash in, take a second mortgage on my house, but I bought everything I could, and still waiting on it. So hopefully it'll be here. I'll be in Bloomington on Saturday all day for the men's game. So if you're in Bloomington and want to have a beer, hit me up on Twitter, and we'll grab a beer before the men's game. Hopefully I'll have some new Home Field apparel to wear before then.
I do want to remind our fans who follow us here on Doing the Work and Assembly Call, next Saturday, the 4th, I believe it is. I'm not looking at the calendar, but the 4th is going to be the Assembly Call meetup. There'll still be some information to come out about that. But even if you can't go to the game, we'll be meeting up someplace after the game, and you can get a chance to meet and greet. And for those of you, especially who follow only us here on Doing the Work, we'd be glad to hopefully meet you at the meetup as well. And you can, if you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. You can be a part of our private community as well. Join today at assemblycall.com. I want special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our new logos. And we try to use that every one of them every episode, and you see one of them up here in the right-hand corner if you're watching on the YouTube feed. Also, a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our new music that you heard throughout the broadcast. Also want to thank everybody for listening and watching tonight. We had over 100 tonight for a little bit here in the YouTube feed, and I think that might be a record for us. So kudos to everybody who joined us tonight after the game to watch here on YouTube. And thank you for listening.
Kathy wasn't here, Jeff, you know.
I think they found out you were going to be on, Jay. So
that's right with us.
That's what it was. And so, we want to thank everybody in the Workaholics. Want to thank Jay Horry for coming on with and being with me kind of short notice this evening. Want to thank everybody for listening wherever you're listening on your favorite podcast feed. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Sunday after the Rutgers game. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. All right. Thanks, Jay.
That was fun, Coach.
That was fun. I really enjoyed it. We need to have you back again. Hey, I want to ask you a quick question after we go off here, so don't get out of the studio right away.
No problem.
All right. Hey, want to thank everybody out there. It's been a late night. I was on late last night with the guys after the Minnesota game, so the nights are starting to run together. But want to appreciate everybody who was here. We'll talk to you again on Sunday. Bye, everybody.
See you guys.